Hello everyone, hope you're doing alright. Today we're talking about the Tactics Vanguard, a spec that's very easy to mess up if you don't know what you're doing, but if you do know what's going on, it's very easy to play. If you can count to 4, you should be able to rock and roll. Brief disclaimer as usual, I'm not an expert, I'm just a nerd that plays a lot of SWTOR. If you have any recommendations, things that I missed, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I'm sure your fellow players would appreciate it. Alright, let's dive into it. For your tertiary stats, accuracy, PvE, 110% every single time. It's very important. In PvP though, you can kind of get rid of it all. You don't really need it. For your alacrity, 7.2% alacrity should be your threshold you should aim for, and then just throw everything else into crit, and then you will be ready to roll and do a whole bunch of damage. For our tacticals, the most important single target one is overwhelming offense. It's very boring. Very, very boring. Just do damage, do more damage. We don't really have a designated single target tactical here for tactics. It's very, very sad. So just take overwhelming offense and you should be ready to rock and roll. For AoE though, take flame detonation. When you use flame detonation, you can throw your assault plastique onto a target and then use an explosive surge, and then everything blows up. It's beautiful. We love to see it. Finally, in PvP, specifically in arenas, get a Life Warden. We don't really have a lot of healing here in Tactics, so if you get a Life Warden, you'll be able to heal a whole bunch of that damage and get a little bit of the sustain that we don't really get out of this spec using our Tactical. For your legendaries, Mandalorian Armaments package is very important. Mandalorian Armaments is going to make you do more shoulder cannons after you use your first shoulder cannon, so it's just free damage. You don't really have to think about it. It's very, very nice. Finally, we use our Shock Trooper package. That way, every time you use our Stock Strike, we're going to regenerate 4 cells, which is very nice. Additionally, our damage is going to be increased by 10% for 15 seconds every time you use a Tactical Surge or an Energy Blast. It's just free extra damage. We don't really have to think about it. For our combat styles here, Serrated Blade is great for single target damage. It's going to increase the damage of our gut. It's great. For AoE, you can take ricochet rounds. So if you want to be fluffing that AoE numbers, you can totally take ricochet rounds. For the next, take Storm. It's a charge. We need that little leap for tactics, especially we have a gun, but we're a melee spec. So take charge or take Storm here. It's just the easiest way to get closer to the target. Take High Explosive Deal here. It's going to increase the damage of our Assault Plastique. The other options are, Superheated Cells isn't as good, just straight up. And then if you want to be using AoE, you can totally use Killzone, but frankly, take the massive Assault Plastique provided by Assault or High Yield Explosives. Finally, Advanced Infantry Tactics is going to be increasing our range up to 15 meters for a lot of our abilities. It's very nice, and then we're going to get our Balmoran Advanced Weaponry back much faster, a couple seconds faster, but the extra range is what's most important here. In PvE, I take Electro Shield here. It's just flat up fluffing numbers, which is very, very nice. In PvP, I take Paralytic Combat Stims. It's going to help out with our cell management here. Cell management is pretty botched in Tactics if you don't know what you're doing, so having this will make you able to spend a lot more of your high damaging abilities without having to worry about destroying our cells. A lot of these options up here in these top 3 roads are actually pretty viable. If you want to be fluffing, you take Reflective Armor to use that. Oh my goodness! What are you doing? Why are you destroying my computer? Holy jeez. Sorry. Reflective Armor is going to be fluff damage, straight up fluff damage. It's very, very nice. Frontline Defense is great for AoE reduction, so that's what I usually take in PvE situations. And then in PvP, Entangling Tools is nice for slowing targets and keeping them close to us. We want to be as obnoxious as possible and using those slows. Moving the line here, Hold the Line is going to be always useful in every situation. In some fights in PvE, you can take Guard Cannon. If you're just like not moving a whole lot, you can totally use Guard Cannon and just get that little bit of extra healing. It's not great, but it beats poke in the eye. And then sometimes in PvP, you're going to want that Cryo Grenade stun. It's kind of optional though, and up to you. Finally, moving up the line, Sonic Rebounder is almost always the choice here in PvE. In PvP, I like Efficient Tools for the extra CC break and the extra range on our shoulder cannon and our grapple, so it's pretty nice. Some people take Paralytic Augs here for the extra duration of our CC, but it's kind of dealer's choice. All of these 9 options here are pretty darn good, so you're not going to go wrong with any of them. Okay, let's talk about actually doing damage. The first ability that we're going to talk about, we're going to mention it very briefly. It is our gut. Gut is a melee ability. You use it on the target. It's going to apply a dot here for the next 18 seconds or so called bleeding. This does a whole bunch of damage, but the most important thing it does is that it's going to let us use our high impact bolt and actually refresh the duration of this bleed. So every time we use our high impact bolt here, it will refresh the duration of this bleed. It'll give us some cells back for using high impact bolt on a bleeding target. So it's a great way to keep that bleed up and running without having to actually reapplying it 24/7. So we really just use it at the beginning of the fight, and then we never worry about it again because we're going to be using our high impact bolt very, very frequently. Speaking of high impact bolt, let's talk about it real quick. High impact bolt does a couple things. For one, it refreshes the duration of our bleed, which is very nice, and it's going to be slowly building these 3 stacks of energy load. Energy load is only built by using high impact bolt, and one other ability we'll talk about in a sec. So we want to be spamming our high impact bolt as often as possible. So we have by default a 14-second cooldown here in high impact bolt. We can talk about how we're going to lower that later. And then once you use your high impact bolt 4 times, you're going to have these 4 stacks of energy load. It's these little red little circle things looking, and every time you use a high impact bolt, you use it until you get up to 4 stacks. When you get to 4 stacks, your cell burst becomes available and glowing. Now you can use cell burst at 1, 2, 3, or 4 stacks. Just save up for the big massive 4 stack cell burst. It's very, very nice. So when it hits 4 stacks, hit your cell burst, and then boop, it does a whole bunch of damage. So let's refresh really quickly. Gut onto the target, it's a dot, does damage over time, great. Every time you use a high impact bolt on the target, you will slowly build up to 4 stacks of energy load. And when you get to 4 stacks of energy load, you will be able to unleash a massive cell burst and do a whole bunch of damage. It's pretty darn nice. So obviously the idea here is that we want to be using as many high impact bolts as possible very, very quickly. Well, fortunately, you don't actually have to wait the full 14-second cooldown of high impact bolt. We can actually lower that cooldown by using either stock strike, boop, come on, hit the target, not evade, thank you, stock strike, or we can use it or lower the cooldown by using our tactical surge. So if we use our stock strike or our tactical surge, our high impact bolt becomes available, and you can see here that's much more efficient than waiting out the full 14 seconds of, wait for a high impact bolt to come off cooldown. If we're using our tactical surge and our stock strike, we are lowering the cooldown of our high impact bolt so that we can use it more and get those fat cell bursts. However, it's not like we can be doing this 24/7. There is a 4-button cooldown between when your high impact bolt becomes available and the next time it will be. So every 4 buttons, you will lower the cooldown of high impact bolt. All right, so if you see here, I'm using tactical surge. It's not coming off of cooldown. Why is that? Well, it's because you need to wait out that little duration to make sure that your high impact bolt is coming off of cooldown. So the goal for us is every 4 abilities, we want to be using our stock strike and our tactical surge to make sure that we are being the most efficient that we can be when building our high impact bolt. So every 4 buttons, we are using either stock strike or tactical surge. Pretty straightforward. But what's going on between those 4 buttons? For 1, 2, and 3, what are we doing there? Well, I'm glad you asked me. We are following a very, very basic priority system. These are our 6 abilities in priority order here. We'll start at the top and then we'll work our way slowly down. The first is going to be Assault Plastique. Assault Plastique is a great little ability. You throw it on the target, does 30,000 damage, and it leaves a debuff on the target, making the target take more damage. You can see here, Assault Plastique, we'll throw it on the target, boop, 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 boop. It's going to wait a little bit to explode, and then when it explodes, boop, 30,000 damage, and then the target is now susceptible and makes the target take more damage, which is very nice for us. That's it. That's all the interactions you have to know for this. Just throw it on the target, wait a few seconds, it'll explode and do a whole bunch of damage. The next ability in our priority system here is actually our Stock Strike. Stock Strike is going to deal 22,000 damage, so not great, not terrible, but it'll also sunder the target, making the target have less armor, meaning that we do more damage to the target when we hit it with our big abilities. It's pretty nice. It also doesn't cost a lot of energy thanks to our legendary that we're taking, so it's a great way to help us juggle our energy. So Stock Strike is the second most important ability. The third most important ability is actually our Cell Burst. Now you might ask yourself, why is this so far down in the priority system? Well, that's because it doesn't really matter when you use your Cell Burst as long as you're not wasting your high impact bolts. right? So if you're sitting here at 4 stacks of cell bursts and you use a high impact bolt, it's not like you're building up to 5 cell bursts. You kind of can just put it off and just make sure that you're using it before using a high impact bolt. But these other abilities have cooldowns. So instead of spending a cooldown waiting or using our cell bursts, we kind of want to be using our high damaging abilities first, and then we can use our cell bursts and unleash, the massive oogles and boogles of damage onto the target. So it is our third most important ability in our priority system. Here, whenever it's glowing, you hit it. Our fourth most important ability in our priority system is our high impact bolt. Again, because the cooldown is getting refreshed so quickly, it can kind of sit further down the priority tree, because say you put this off until like the third button, you can use high impact bolt and then refresh it, and then you can go right back into high impact bolt. It doesn't share the same limitations of Assault Plastique and Stock Strike by having those fixed long cooldowns. We can kind of get away with putting off our high impact bolts as long as possible. Now we enter into a little bit of a funny part of the rotation where people will mess this up. If you mess up this little section of the priority system, you're going to run into some serious problems. Because every time you are below 75 cells, you should be using Hammer Shot if you reach this section of the priority tree, all right? Or even if you're not, if you're just learning the spec, if you were below 75 cells, you should probably use a Hammer Shot, like 70 to 75 cells. Hammer Shot does not do a lot of damage. It's sad, but it gives you time to refresh your cells. The way that cell management works in this spec is that the lower your cells get, the slower they regenerate. So if you get down here, so I'm going to spend all my cells very, very quickly. If you get down here to like the 20s and the 10s, you're going to very slowly regenerate these cells. If you have more cells, they regenerate faster. If you have less cells, they regenerate slower. So our goal is to be hovering between like 70 and 100 cells throughout this entire rotation, because the last thing you want to happen is you run out of cells and the boss has like 40% health left and you have nothing to do but sit here and spam Hammer Shot over and over and over again, and then be sad because you're not doing any damage. For those of you who don't know, you can actually see the exact number of cells you have if you go into your interface editor, click on your player frame, and then show information text. That'll show you exactly how many cells you have. So if you're below 70 to 75 cells, please be using Hammer Shot. It is the most important part of this rotation for not messing it up, all right? Because the most dangerous ability that we have is our Tactical Surge. Tactical Surge does like 20,000 damage. It's very nice. It's Ion Pulse at lower levels. But the issue is that it has no cooldown and consumes 15 cells. So it does a lot of damage if you let it. But if you overuse it, it will destroy your cells. And then you will have no energy left. And then you'll have to sit there and wonder, where did it all go wrong? It went wrong because you spammed Tactical Surge too much, and then you didn't have any tools to recover. All right? So that's the basic priority system here. From the top, Assault Plastique, Stock Strike, Cell Burst when it's at 4, High Impact Bolt, and then juggling, Hammer Shot, and Tactical Surge when you're below or above 70 to 75 cells. All right? So how it's going to look is that for 1, 2, and 3, we are following this basic priority system. And then on 4, every time we are refreshing the cooldown of our High Impact Bolt by either using Stock Strike or Tactical Surge. So for 1, 2, and 3, we use our priority system, and then on 4, we refresh our Stock Strike. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4 refresh. 1, 2, 3, 4 refresh. 1, 2, 3, 4 refresh, etc., etc., etc. One thing to note that I didn't do here, if you have gut on the target, it actually helps with the cell management. If you have gut on the target and then you use your high impact bolt, it'll actually regenerate 5 cells. So that's why we want to make sure we are opening up with gut. Make sure we have it on the target, and then it's just free damage, which we love to see. So 1, 2, 3, 4th refresh. 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 1, etc., etc., etc. Like if you can count to 4, you can play tactics. It's very, very simple. Now, if you want to be super safe, you can use your hammer shot before like 80% cells if you're like just getting into it, but you'll learn over time the ways you can kind of push the envelope to make sure that you're chunking out as much damage as possible. The real damage in this spec comes from knowing when you can spam Tactical Surge and knowing when you need to use your hammer shots. There are a couple of other abilities that we should mention here. For example, if you do botch your cells, we have this ability here called Recharge Cells, which will make your next ability consume no cells and then will regenerate 50 cells over the next 3 seconds. It is your one get out of jail free card, so if you use it, you can then spend it on any ability you want. The next ability consumes no cells and then it regenerates 50 cells very, very quickly. You get this once every minute and a half, so use it wisely. You can push the envelope a little bit when you still have it available. And then once it's on cooldown, once you use it, you should probably play a little bit more timidly. Just make sure you're not going to run into a situation where you're going to have to sit here and spam hammer shots for 30 years in a row. It's just not fun. So it's your get out of jail free card if you botch your cells. The second ability here is going to be our Shoulder Cannon. Shoulder Cannon does not follow the basic global cooldown. So if you're going to notice here, there's always like a split second, a second and a half when you will not be able to use your primary damaging abilities. What Shoulder Cannon does is that it doesn't actually respect the global cooldown, so you can use it with your other abilities. So you can see here it's slowly building up 7 shoulder cannons over time. Once we have all 7 shoulder cannons available, you can actually be spamming it alongside your other abilities. So if I want to just spam it with Tactical Surge and Shoulder Cannon, I can just hit both buttons at once, and then it'll use both our shoulder cannons and our Tactical Surge over and over and over again, etc., etc. This is not how you should play this spec, by the way. It's just an example. It is free damage. Literally free damage. It consumes no heat, no energy. So when you have it, use it. But it matches up very nicely with our Battle Focus. So Battle Focus gives you 25% crit chance for the next 15 seconds. It's very, very nice. It turns your like 35% crit into like a 60% crit, which is, free damage. Free damage. If you have a burst window, you want to be using it alongside your Battle Focus. Additionally, we have this ability here called Balmoran Advanced Weaponry. How this works is that when you use it the first time, it will give you 40% armor and then 2% extra damage, but it stacks up to 5 times. Every time you're attacked, you build a stack. So if you have 5 stacks, you have 10% extra damage and you have 200% extra armor. So you take a lot less damage, you do more damage, it's very nice. But the primary thing that it's doing is that it will give you 4 stacks of energy burst, energy load immediately. So for example, here, if I spend my cell burst right away, boop, it does a whole bunch of damage. Can't wait to do that again one day. Well, if you use Balmoran Advanced Weaponry, boop, it'll instantly generate 5 stacks of energy load, and then you can, boop, hit the target again with that fat cell burst back to back. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's a free 4 stacks of your cell burst, so, just use it. Basically on cooldown. It's going to have like a 50 second cooldown because of our utility here where our gut ticks are refreshing or slower than the cooldown of it. So it's a free way to build 4 stacks very, very quickly. Additionally, when you get into, I think it's like level 73, this might be bugged, it might be 78 here, but when you use any regens like your recharge or your reload or like a push-up toy, etc., you will slowly build 4 stacks of energy load. So anytime you go into a fight from here on out, you can just use your recharge and reload or your push-ups or whatever toy you want, and then you will build up your 4 stacks, so you should be ready to rock and roll. All right, break down real quick one last time. Gut on the target immediately. High impact bolt builds loads, refreshes your bleeding. 4 loads. Massive cell burst damage. Following the priority system here of Assault Plastique, into Stock Strike, into Glowing Cell Burst, into High Impact Bolt, Hammer Shot, and Tactical Surge. Juggle it, Hammer Shot when you're below 70 to 70% on your cells, and then Tactical Surge to fill otherwise. 1, 2, and 3 are all fills. 4 is a refresh. So either Stock Strike or Tactical Surge to get those High Impact Bolts back as quickly as possible. There is like a 35 button rotation you can use for your opener. You don't really have to memorize it. It's more like if you want to be a turbo nerd and just parse it out, or if you want to sit down and memorize it, you totally can. Here's the basics of what you need to know, all right? When you jump in, we want to be applying all of our debuffs and buffs first and then use our massive cell burst, all right? So what we want to do is we want to use our Assault Plastique into our gut. So we're going to Assault Plastique, gut, and then Stock Strike, Tactical Surge, and then spend all your offensive cooldowns. So, for example, your Battle Focus, Cell Burst, and then you can use 2 abilities. Cell Burst does apply like a little bit of a dot, so we don't want to be wasting that dot. And then Balmoran Advanced Weaponry, and then just follow this basic rotation again. Build up as many of those high impact bullets as fast as possible, and then just get rocking and rolling, spending your shoulder cannons when you have Battle Focus. So again, one more time, I know that was very disjointed. Gut into Assault Plastique, into Stock Strike, Tactical Surge, and then that massive Cell Burst, and then just get rocking and rolling. You should be ready to rock and roll and do a whole bunch of damage. You can memorize it if you want to, but frankly, like, this spec gets going very, very quickly. If you don't do everything perfectly, that's fine. That's the beauty of a priority system like this, is that if I'm sitting here and I use my Stock Strike when I could use my Assault Plastic, oh no, like, it's not the end of the world. Just do better next time. The way you get good at this spec is by maximizing the ways that you're using this priority system. It's not by following a set rotation and getting good gear. Obviously, good gear helps, but the more you practice this spec and you sit down, 1, 2, 3, filler this tree, and then on 4, Stock Strike or Tactical Surge, and then you should be ready to rock and roll. For our defensives, real quick, Reactive Shield will increase our defensive reduction by 25%. So you'll take less damage for 15 seconds. Not great, not terrible. We do have a utility here from Sonic Round, where if you use a Sonic Round, your defense chance will be increased by 30%. So you're going to give yourself a 30% chance to avoid all damage. So it's not a permanent way to decrease all damage, but it gives you a chance to avoid something if it's going to hit you. So not great, not terrible. Finally, we have our Adrenaline Rush here. Adrenaline Rush is going to rapidly heal you up to 35% of your health. So it's not going to like stop you from dying. It's going to prevent you from dying for a few seconds. So it's a not great defensive toolkit, if I'm honest with you. That's why Tactics is just like a glass cannon. We do a whole bunch of damage with our abilities, but we don't have a lot of defensive cooldowns to really mitigate the damage as it comes in. A couple things to note here. Neuro Jolt is a taunt. In PvE, you should almost never touch this. In PvP, you should touch this all the time like your life depends on it. It'll give you free medals, and it'll help prevent your teammates from dying. It's very, very nice. I'm pretty sure that's it, though. When it comes to AoE damage, you can use either Flak Shell, which is going to do a little bit of damage, or you can use your Explosive Pro, which is going to do a little bit of damage. Both of these technically refresh the high impact bolt duration, so you can kind of replace Tactical Surge with Flak Shell and Explosive Surge when you're in AoE situations. But frankly, this spec is not built for AoE. This spec is built for single target, massive oogles and boogles of damage. So you probably should just play Pyro if you're looking to do AoE fluff. That's all I have to say about the Tactics Vanguard. It's a good time. If there's anything I missed, I don't think I missed anything. But if there is anything, let me know in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Someone get this darn dog off of me. He's a little puppy. He wants attention all the time. I need to take him to a dog pen. So that's all I got. That's all I got. Call your mother. She misses you. And you miss Mother's Day, which is, not a good look. So that's all I got. Take care. Goodbye.